Who are the top 4 guys that are under pressure currently in the NBA? I got them here for you now. Under pressure. At number 4, Damian Lillard. Dame time. I think the buck stops here for you for a title, and let me explain what I'm talking about, because Damian Lillard is one of my favorite people in the league, players. Other than Steph Curry, I don't know if there's anybody more exciting with a basketball in his hand. Luka, Kyrie. I mean, there's a couple others, but man, when Damian Lillard is putting on Dame time and putting on his clutchness, he is one of the best players in the league. And when he left to Milwaukee, that was supposed to be a game changer. I mean, a lot of people don't remember. That was really supposed to be a big freaking deal. He was supposed to go to Miami. He didn't. Disappointed me and others. He goes to Milwaukee to join Giannis. And, I mean, he's still got 2 years left on his $48 million deal. It looks like he's going to be there regardless. But there has been rumblings of, if this year doesn't pan out, that Giannis will be the one to jump ship. So, I mean, you know, and they have all the excuses in the world they could use from last season and their lack of success, specifically Giannis being hurt during the playoff run for the second year in a row. I mean, it's not even an unfair argument, to be honest. I mean, if the best player, your most dominant young MVP stud, goes down in both playoffs and you lose, it really doesn't take a genius to go, that might have been a significant reason. But Damian Lillard really was supposed to push them over the hump, and they were getting there for a while. I mean, when they actually had, just so you know, as a little fun facts here, when they had Giannis, Dame, and Chris Middleton together, which is only 42 games during the injury, they had a plus 17.5 net rating. They didn't get to play any playoff games together, so we have no idea what they could do under actual pressure there. But you know, Damian even said himself, it was a harder transition than he thought, because he was a lifer in Portland and he suddenly moved his life and his family, well, some of his family, to Milwaukee. He said it really was. It was a hard transition for me, getting used to new players. Plus, in my own life, I moved cities. He had a divorce. Any man that's gone through a divorce, or a woman, can tell you that's pretty stressful and it might affect your job a little bit. They switched coaches, which was a big deal. You know, they went to Doc Rivers, and boy, that didn't work out at all, did it? I mean, they were only 17-19 with Doc Rivers, the coach that they fired. You know, I mean, reluctance there. I mean, they were much better when they had the other coach. But I mean, you know, even his stats, Damian Lillard, let me throw this in here too. His stats were down, and I think that's something to mention. I mean, you know, we expected his scoring to drop because he's joining Giannis and Middleton and everybody else. But, I mean, to go from 32.2 points per game to 24, that's a big drop. The three-point shot, which, you know, shouldn't change no matter where you go, went from 37% to only 35%. And then his assist rates only went down from 7.3 to 7. So he played with better players, and his assist went down, his three-point percentage went down, his points per game went down. Their record, you know, stunk at the end of the year. There's a lot of reason to say that Damian has to really put up a strong year this year to justify the moves and the hype and all the things that we put together, saying like, oh, man, Milwaukee's going to be a championship team now with this team together. And, yes, they had the excuse, and that's why I got him lower on the list of saying, well, hey, we had injuries, we had problems, we had things we were going through this year. We're going to be ready to rock, and we shall see. But I think you got to be at the top there for me of like people I expect to really feel the pressure of, I better put up or shut up this year, because if not, Giannis is gone and you just fade off into obscurity as one of those guys who was always really good but never quite made it. So Damian, you're number 4 under pressure. Under pressure. Number 3, let's move on to the next one here. Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum. I am not your biggest fan, and it's nothing personal. I did think the post-final celebration, I've played those before, where you copied everybody else but yourself in your celebrations, doing Garnett, quoted Kanye. I thought that was cringeworthy and dorky. But, I mean, you seem overall like a nice dude, great father, you know, good teammate, wonderful human being. You still have everything to prove to me. Jason Tatum, to me, still has everything to prove out of maybe anybody else in the NBA who wants to be considered a top guy, which sucks for you because you're coming off a gold medal and an NBA championship, and everybody, I think I'm not alone, look at you and go, nah. It was cute. It was a B-plus season for a B-plus player. That is always how I've really looked at the last season with Jason Tatum, and the Olympics only highlighted that anymore and added more pressure to you. Still have a lot to prove. You better have that chip on your shoulder that you claim you do, because to me, you were a B-plus player who had a B-plus season. And I mean, to be honest, some of this isn't really all your fault. Let's keep it a buck. Not all of this, you know, criticism or doubt of Jason Tatum, who just won a gold medal and a championship, is actually all his fault. So I will say that.
Look at me, son. It's not your fault.
It's not your fault that every team you played was hurt. Let me start off with that. Yes, you guys did win the NBA Finals. You had to play who was in front of you. It's not Jason Tatum's fault that the Heat were hurt, that the Cavs were hurt, that the Pacers were hurt, that they didn't have to face Milwaukee, the other big threat, because they were hurt. The Knicks were also hurt by the time that they limped into the other side of the playoffs on the Eastern Conference. Then they got to play a tired Mavericks who were only there because Denver choked. So it's really not your fault that every team you played, Heat, Cavs, Pacers, you didn't have to go through the Bucks, and the Mavericks were all the way gassed out, is your fault at all. You played who was in front of you, and you beat them handily. So that's not Jason Tatum's problem.
Look at me, son. It's not your fault.
But what is your fault is the reason you got DNP'd in the Olympics. That is one thing I will say. It is actually your fault that you were not used at all, that you were kind of just a guy at the end of the bench, that you were DNP'd twice, which is probably the first time ever in history I could think of that an NBA player who's at the prime of his life at 27 years old, coming off an NBA championship, arguably supposed to be one of the top 10 players in the league, got benched because they had nowhere to put him. That's all your fault. Because the fact is, it is just a microcosm of everything that I've always criticized about Jason Tatum. You're good at everything and you're great at nothing. And I'm sorry, I don't think it's Steve Kerr's fault that he looked at a roster besides Steph and LeBron that needed role players and specialists, people that were the best at what they do, and he had nowhere to put you because, again, you're good at everything, but you're great at nothing. I will never stop mentioning this. Jason Tatum, for all the credit he wants and for all what the fan base wants to give him, was not top 5 in any statistical category in the NBA last season. Google this all yourself. Jason Tatum was not top 5 in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, field goal percentage, three-point made, fantasy points, triple-doubles, not a damn one. Jason Tatum was not top 5 in any of those statistical categories, so it would have been a surprise to not just him, but no one else, that when Steve Kerr looked and said, I need people who can shoot, I need people who can play defense, I need people who can rebound, I want the best at it, he was a Swiss Army knife that really just had no home. I mean, you know, we had people besides you that could shoot better than you. We had people that can create offense better than you. We had people that can rebound better than you. And the stats showed it. So you had to sit your ass on the end of the bench, and you are now saying, you know, a lot of people, oh, it's unfair. Why would you do that to him? Because you're a B-plus player who had a B-plus season. You still got a lot to prove to me. Jason Tatum, to me, is still under a lot of pressure, and not all of it is your fault, but a lot of it is, because the way you designed your game was, I'm going to be good at everything, but you're not really going to excel at anything. I would rather have people with a flaw. Steph Curry can shoot. He's not that great a defender. Shaq was dominant, but obviously he wasn't a good shooter. Kobe's a great scorer, but he had to learn how to pass. I would rather have someone who's great at something and maybe has some other flaws, but something they can positively lean on versus a Jason Tatum who's, above average at everything, and it makes for a solid player. But when push comes to shove and I ask you for an identity and you don't have one, that's your fault.
It is absolutely 150% your fault.
We'll see how you do this year. And it's sad that a title doesn't really seem to mean shit to me or a lot of other fans. But I think we all looked at the same dude. You beat a bunch of hurt teams and you're good, but you're not great. Win 2 in a row and we'll talk. Moving on to my next guy, and that's going to lead me to my first one. Someone else, I have him number 2, under the most pressure now in the NBA, Klay Thompson. Under pressure. You break my heart with this one because, just the old phrase, be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. You had nothing to prove in Golden State. You could have still made a very good amount of money. You could have still been a splash brother. You could have been beloved and remembered as the 4-time champion legend and faded off into the sunset like you wanted to. But now you decided, and I'm not even mad at you. This is what makes NBA players great. I have an ego. This is bullshit. I'm being sat behind this guy and this guy. I deserve to play. I'm still one of the best players out there. I want to prove myself. I need out of here. He basically, had a fit until they let him go, and he signed with the Dallas Mavericks and joined Luka and Kyrie. And you know what? It's a great fit. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, the fact is, 2024 finals, the Dallas Mavericks shot only 31.6% from threes as they got their ass kicked in that series. They only shot 68% from free throws as they got their ass kicked in that series. You had a Klay Thompson who still got some juice left, 17.9 points per game, 39% from threes, second greatest shooter to ever live. It makes a lot of sense that you thought, hey, I can go here and help out Luka and Kyrie and give them that spacer when they get doubled, and maybe we can put this whole thing together. They were just in the NBA finals. I'm the one who could put them over the hump. You win on 2 teams. That adds to your greatness. You still don't get up to Steph, which you never will, but that's okay. No one, that's really nobody other than Jordan, LeBron can really, Kobe, it's a short list of people that can make that point. But I mean, still, you could really add to your legacy by winning a championship, but you're under pressure now, and it's all your fault. Under pressure. You better do what you think you're going to do, because Golden State was just, perfectly. The road was golden for you, man. We had an offense for you. We had everyone that knew exactly where you wanted it, how you liked it. You had coaches that loved you. You had a fan base that loved you, and you're going to a whole new world where they could use you, because, again, 31.6% in the NBA Finals from threes is not going to get it done, and you have guys like Kyrie and Luka that could use that person to take that pressure off, but that also does, by the way, come with the caveat, you're still the third option. I hope Klay understands that much. Dude, you were still third or fourth on the roster, just like you were in Golden State. The only difference is now you have Luka and Kyrie, who are two of the most ball-dominant players, not just of today's league, but in NBA history. Look up their thing called usage rate, which means, how much do they dribble and pass and create the offense themselves. Dude, the ball stops with both of them on separate teams. They already have a hard enough time putting themselves together to play together where, they can figure out, hey, let me do my thing, you do your thing. They've actually had to kind of stagnate their playing time. If you wouldn't watch how they did the rotation, a lot of times they kind of switched them out because they're both so used to having the ball literally 50, 60, 70, sometimes 80% of the time of the offense. It's not going to be much different. I hope Klay doesn't go to Dallas thinking anything other than you're going to be a spot-up shooter. That's what you become. You are now going to be pretty much what you were Golden State and got upset about. A spot-up shooter who, when you get hot, they're going to give you the ball. Other than that, they're going to leave you alone, and you might sit at the end of games. You might be benched for other younger players. I mean, it ain't all it's cracked up to be when you move on. Grass is always greener until you get there. And I love Klay. I'll miss him. He is one of my favorite players of all time. I did not like the little hissy fit he had at the end, though, even though he probably had some arguments to it, saying, hey, Draymond got paid, Wiggins got paid, why didn't I get paid? It makes on paper a lot of sense going to Dallas that needs a shooter, but we'll see. We'll see. You still, to me, have a lot of pressure on you now that you didn't need to add to yourself by switching teams and doing what you did. So sad to say, Klay Thompson is one of the reasons I have him on the list at number 2 for the most pressure of any player that I can think of in the entire NBA. Number 1, I don't even have to leave your own team. Who's under pressure the most in the NBA this year? It's not a star, but it's this guy, Brandon Podziemski. I swear to God, I am so... and it's not even, again, it's not your fault. This is not your fault, but I don't like you.
Look at me, son. It's not your fault.
I do not understand this obsession with Brandon Podziemski and the Golden State Warriors. And I mean, a lot of you fans may already know what I'm getting into, but I'm going to break it down for those that don't. This is just their precious little second-year guy who's a good player and a nice guy and I think a decent human being and could be a solid role player, but we have let Klay go now. We have let Chris Paul go now. We have foregone big trades that I'll get into in a second because they cannot let go of this second-year dude who's 9 points a game. I mean, what are you guys, Gollum? He's all right at best. I mean, look, Brandon Podziemski, who is a decent player, is not, even at this point, a Klay Thompson, a Chris Paul, and Lauri Markkanen, who got a trade for that we denied because of it. But I mean, the other thing that it's just, I think that's been proven, as we just saw in the Olympics, Steph Curry is still Steph Curry. Steph Curry is still one of the best players in the world, was arguably the best player in the world, as people thought he should have got the MVP for the Olympic team. LeBron had more consistency. That's neither here nor there. The point being, Steph Curry is still Steph Curry, but he is 36 years old. He needs players now. We don't need help 3 years down the line. Steph Curry could still win a title if he had at least one more other superstar with him. And the fact remains that when it came to making the big trade, and let's go to this video, I don't get it. We could have got Lauri Markkanen, and we didn't do it. All reports say we offered Moody, we offered multiple first, we offered second, we offered pick swaps, but we would not give up Brandon Podziemski for this guy. 7 foot, 240 pound, 27-year-old all-star, averaging 23 points per game, 8 rebounds, and shooting 40% from threes. He was exactly what we wanted. I was hoping, as soon as I heard rumors a year and a half ago of like, oh my God, if we get Lauri Markkanen, the Warriors are going to go back to being a freaking problem. And all we had to give up, according to reports, was a couple guys, some picks, and Brandon, and we said no for that? Oh, imagine that dude with Steph Curry and that crew and Draymond and everybody else. 7 foot, 240, 40% from threes in his athletic prime, an all-star right now. But we said, no, we can't get rid of him. We got Brandon Podziemski. That's asking too much. For that, Are y'all freaking nuts? Brandon Podziemski is 9.2 points per game, 5.8 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 39% from threes. And yes, he draws some charges, and yes, he has a high plus-minus. Plus-minus is one of the best and worst stats in the entire league, because the fact of that also is that you have to do what you can do with the lineup around you. Just so y'all know, some of the top people with the plus-minus stat in the entire league are players like Sam Hauser's at 7th, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is at 5th, Peyton Pritchard is 10th, because it's not just how you play, it's who you play with. If you get to play around a bunch of other legends, you get to have a very high plus-minus, as Hauser and Pritchard and some of the other guys have. And, I mean, look, the number one played lineup for Brandon last year was Brandon, Steph Curry, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, and Jonathan Kuminga. That was the highest, not just of the minutes he played, of the lineup that he played around. That was the highest of the entire Golden State Warriors season that year. So, yeah, a lot of people can look good. You put them next to Steph, Wiggins, Draymond, and Kuminga, you're going to look pretty damn good yourself. So, that plus-minus thing is one of the most, not overrated, but overused stats when it doesn't actually look at logic and examine the gray area. But still, we did not take that kid because we couldn't give up Brandon. You better be the shit.
You better cure cancer, kid.
You better be a legend. I mean, and I'm not saying 2 years from now. I'm not saying 3 years from now. I'm saying next year. You better go from 9.2 points to at least 18 points per game. You better be arguing for Sixth Man of the Year. I better see you be the second or third leading scorer on this team consistently every single night. Because if we were not willing to give up you and some picks to get that kid in Markkanen or some of the other stars that were up for trades, and we're like, oh, no, we can't get rid of Brandon. The pressure's on you, kid. And right or wrong, true or false, every time we lose and Steph Curry gets farther away from winning one last championship, I'm going to stare at that kid directly and go, damn it, you're the reason. It may not be right. It may not be fair. Kiss my ass. It's my world. It's my opinion. It's my show. I am going to blame you specifically. And I don't think you did anything to do this yourself. I don't think you actually asked management, hey, don't get rid of me under any circumstance. But since they pretty much said publicly, we think you're going to be the next big freaking thing, you freaking better. I don't know what they see in you. I don't get it.
I don't get it.
I think you're solid at best. I think you're a role player. I think you're an eighth man on a championship rotation. I think you're a poor man's Dante DiVincenzo. I do not think you were worth not trading for Lauri freaking Markkanen, 27-year-old, 7 foot 240. Oh, he can catch lobs. He can shoot threes. God. You better be good, man.
You better cure cancer.
You
kid.
better be something this year, not in the future, now. That one really gets under my skin, Mateo. I'm sorry. I get a little fired up on that. It's just, you hate seeing talent wasted. You hate seeing talent wasted. Moving on, NFL is last preseason week.